Welcome to Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame Mode Fandom. My name is Wilder Adams, and in today's episode, I am joined by Zach Rudeen of T-Wolves Country, one of the biggest Instagram platforms in the Minnesota Timberwolves community, and he and I were at Jon K's Forgotten Star Brewery live podcasting event, which was alongside Tim Connelly and Matt Lloyd, and we're going to react to what we heard about that, just being able to hear from Matt Lloyd, the Timberwolves GM, and Tim Connelly, the president of basketball operations, on the state of the roster right now. So it's going to be a fun episode. Zach, how's life, man?
It's been great. That was like the first time I'd seen you in person a little bit. I remember my dad randomly tapping me and like pointing to you because I didn't know you were coming to there. And I thought, and you told me it was like last minute that you were going to go as well. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it early on, but what an awesome event that was.
Yeah, shout out to Jon K, man. He's one of the best in the business. He does a great job. And that was just really cool to just, at this point of the off season when we're literally starving for content, we're craving for content, and being able to hear from the president of basketball operations and the GM about the team, I think that's about as good as you can do at this time of the year. So shout out to Jon K for that event. But yeah, so literally this episode, everybody, we're just going to talk about what we thought about it, what we thought about what they said. Zach has some takes, I have some takes, and we're going to talk about the roster. We're going to talk about some themes we captured, Tim Connelly contract stuff a little bit as well. We're going to tap into all of it. But before we start, make sure to subscribe to Wilder Wolves podcast. It is going to be a blast when the season starts, but in between now and then, we're going to be persistent with Timberwolves content, so I'd appreciate if you guys are a part of it. So, Zach, man, it was a long time no see, like you just said, man. I was glad to finally be able to see you again, man. You'd be killing it as a sideline reporter and everything you do out there at St. Cloud State. You're into hockey, you're into basketball, you're building big platforms, man. You're doing everything, man. So I'm proud of you. And I want to start this episode by just asking you, what was your main takeaway after the event?
My main takeaway was that was really fun, and everybody was having a great time. It was just super good vibes the whole way through. We can dissect the main talking points and what they went through later on here, but like, I can't imagine anybody didn't enjoy their time there. You know, Tim and Matt were walking around talking to everybody, having like real conversations with people. I had another conversation with Tim Connelly the second time I've talked to him. Genuinely great dude, and just a super fun event. It seemed like everybody is feeling really good about the team and happy where the organization's at. You know, the owners bought a bunch of drinks for everybody there as well. Like, it was just such a good event that, you know, this team probably could not have had 5 years ago.
No, absolutely not. I totally agree with that. Jon K's been cooking for a long time, so I think he's able to generate a crowd regardless. But in terms of just the electricity with this team, and also I think the confidence is the key word to me, confidence and trust toward the organization. That is just, it is exponentially improved since around when Anthony Edwards got drafted. And like you mentioned, I was able to talk with Matt Lloyd for a bit, talk with Tim Connelly for a bit. And they both of them, it makes sense why they work so well together, but they both have this just likability and this energy to them that people talk about how Tim Connelly's biggest strength is arguably his ability to create relationships around the NBA, knowing what everybody else is doing. You can feel that just likability factor, the relatability, how personal they are, and being able to chat with them. They both have a good sense of humor. They both give everybody time. And it's really good when you can have front office members in which you're trusting what they're doing. And there's been some debate. Did Minnesota go too aggressive on draft capital over the years? Did they overpay for Rudy Gobert? Did they do this? Did they do that? But nobody can argue that the product and just the credibility of those guys is better than it's ever been in franchise history. And also having owners who are engaging with the media, helping out at a Jon K type event, and you get tickets, you get free beer, you get all of these things. It's just the interactivity that is coming with this team. I think it's much better than it's been in the past. Just the engagement factor overall, I'm pretty fond of right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a clear effort to make just everybody in the organization is making an effort to promote the team in a positive manner and just be good people in the community as well. So it's just a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a good feeling, and I don't want to live in the past too much with the Glenn Taylor ownership and things like that, but I think the way the organization overall is just ran, it's way more aggressive, it's confident, it's forward thinking, it's interpersonal, I would say. I thought Glenn Taylor always did a pretty good job with like the games. The accessibility was really good relative to other NBA teams, I would argue, but I still think that we're at a good spot. And let's just transition just basketball takeaways, man, because one theme that we really gathered early, of course, was the LaMelo Ball trade, and hearing about how serious LaMelo's been since coming to Minnesota, how serious the team has been going to Paris, the chemistry that's been building early on, particularly for me with Anthony Edwards. That was a really big theme, and I just thought that hearing how those two are just kind of clicking at this time of the year, and the number one thing was the joyful energy that LaMelo Ball is adding to this organization, how Anthony Edwards really feeds off of that energy, and he likes to exemplify that type of persona as well. And just there hasn't been that before. There was a moodiness with this team last year, and so far it's sounding like those two are gelling well. So what did you think about that?
Yeah, you kind of just said it right there. One of my favorite quotes, I don't remember what the quote was exactly, but Tim was talking about how Ant likes to feed off of a guy like LaMelo, who's a really cheerful and happy dude and likes to have fun. And I can just see those two dudes being best friends off the court. I can see them having just immense chemistry and just added chemistry because there's been a clear intention to detail with Ant specifically, making sure LaMelo feels like he's welcome. We've seen them train at the facility very often together already, trying to build chemistry. They were on the forefront of helping that Paris trip happen, paying for the flights and some of the other stuff there. I know Gobert was a big part of that as well. So when you talk about a team that's losing leadership in Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson and these older players that have been the voices on this team recently, Joe Ingles, Anthony Edwards is trying to step into that role, and it makes sense. He's a veteran in the NBA now. It's his 7th year coming up. He's going to be signing his 3rd contract probably next summer. And I think he's going to step into that role really well. I hope that Anthony Edwards continues to be his full authentic self. I don't want him to lose too much of that. There's some of the stuff that he could maybe lose, but I hope he continues to be a funny guy and have funny moments and stuff like that and not lose his authenticity. That is a part of the reason that makes him special, but he's making a clear step to being a leader, like Finch has also said this offseason.
And perhaps it's not about losing that charisma and that funniness to those guys. I honestly think when you hear we're going to cut that down between Ant and LaMelo, I think there's a baseline of they're just going to have moments. It's going to be funny. It's going to be fun in moments. I'm not sure they're ever going to fully lose that, but I really like to hear, and this has been a theme throughout the offseason. We hear with Chris Finch, we've heard it through previous interviews in the past, but when Anthony Edwards was young, he was goofy, he was fun, he was kind of the class clown. LaMelo was kind of like that, a ball in the family and early in his career, but there was still, despite that charisma, there was always I would say a hesitance in terms of just stepping in front of players 10 years older than him and going rah and saying this is what we need, this is what we need, this is what we need. Minnesota's been looking for Ant to do that more, to really take that full leadership reign by the balls, right? And I think the most encouraging thing is there is that intentionality that we're seeing right now with those two, but most importantly, Anthony Edwards, where of course the Paris thing, and also just being more vocal, having opinions on what players Minnesota is going to go after, being the face of the organization, through the thick and thin, all of those things I think is so great. And like you mentioned, the veterans, you're losing Kyle Anderson, Mike Conley, Julius Randle, as much as some people would be like, seriously, but you're getting rid of 30-year-old plus 10-year veterans in the NBA, and you're saying, all right, we're not replacing them with veterans. We're going to bring in a 24-year-old. We're going to bring back Bones Highland. We're going to bring back I would assume a young locker room. It is your job to lead. I think they're at the spot, man, where they're just putting it on Edwards. There's nobody to look at anymore. We got Rudy Gobert, and we got you. You've been here. You've won for 5 years. Now it's time to lead. And Minnesota, they're basically saying sink or swim. And I think the more Anthony Edwards swims, the way better this team is at.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's time for Ant to take over in that aspect. Like, Mike Conley's a great leader, and he could still impact the team in that sense for sure. But, Mike Conley is like his, the highest he's ever gotten in the playoffs is exactly where Ant's got. And, we never really had a guy on the roster that had gotten farther than Ant has, besides maybe Dante, who's still here, by the way. And maybe some people are underestimating the voice that Dante could still have with this roster overall. But yeah, I think Ant's going to be a top voice this year. I think Rudy Gobert is like, the perfect off the court type of guy, and how you treat your body and how you stay NBA ready and everything like that. There were some funny stories that Tim was talking about with Rudy and Ant and the Paris stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too worried about the leadership and voice stuff this season. I think the right guys are stepping up.
I think there's a certain point when you ask kids to become men, and Anthony Edwards has been ahead of the game every single year of his career. And age 25 is usually when you know what direction a player's going to be. Are they going to be that number one leader, or are they not? And Anthony Edwards, Kendrick Perkins has said it, has been arguably the best young leader in the league for a lot of his career. But at a certain point, you got to get rid of the word young and just be that. Be that relative to Luka, be that relative to Shea, be that relative to Nikola Jokic, some of these best players in the league who are older than him, Jason Tatum, all of these guys. So I was thinking about this during the episode, during their episode. I would love to hear your opinion on this. Because this whole thing has always been about the last handful of years, the Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels timeline, right? So they get Rudy Gobert pretty early, a guy who's going to help them win right away, a guy who's also going to provide off-court discipline, mentorship in that front in ways that maybe Anthony Edwards Young needed to work on. And they always had these veterans around these young players. And throughout time, much more than players like Cade Cunningham and these other guys. And now, 6 years in of having consistent 35-year-old players around Ant, or just clear veterans, they start stripping it down. And they get younger everywhere. And then they go after a star in LaMelo Ball, who's his exact same age. I just think that from an outside perspective, it feels like we're really seeing what their plan has always been in terms of building around Anthony Edwards. Teach him how to win young, which means bring veterans in, and then create flexibility to eventually, when the moment strikes, be able to put talent around him that is of similar age. And LaMelo Ball is at the same age as Anthony Edwards, so we're seeing real time that happening. And now they're saying, hey, Anthony Edwards, you don't need these veterans the way you once did. Now it's time to win with guys these age. We're going to create a core in which the timeline is going to go throughout your prime. I think that's what we're seeing right now. And the LaMelo Ball acquisition, I think, is further evidence that that's been an aspiration for them to be able to put together.
Yeah, the training wheels are off now. It seems like there might be an intention to trust him, and they think he's ready for that. If they didn't, I'm sure they would have done. I don't know if they tried to bring Connelly back necessarily. It's very possible they didn't. They could try to bring back Kyle Anderson. If they didn't think Ant was ready, I think some of those guys would still be here, but they're not. So maybe that just tells you like, oh, they think he's ready. They're ready for this team to get younger and start to really figure out what that core is going to look like over the next, hopefully, decade around Anthony Edwards, because, Mike Conley's probably got 1 year left in the NBA, and you kind of got to start replacing some of those older pieces on the roster with these newer guys. So I think there's an intention to trust Ant probably more now.
Yeah, at a certain point, when you have a franchise player, there's going to be a day in which you just say, all right, it's your time. I trust you. We're going to maximize your prime now. And I think this summer has become that summer. And I'm just so excited now to see how the evolution of this team occurs this year, because I would not be surprised if this is going to be like the biggest just shift in what we see from this team from year one to the next year. Because last year, right, you still lack guard play. They had terrible guard play to start last year. And then, well, Dante is a good player, but we just lacked depth, right?
He just wasn't in his correct role.
Yeah, but he was also the only other guy who really reliably could do that, because Mike Conley was struggling. Rob Dillingham didn't work out. So
I thought he was the best point guard option, not because he's the best pure point guard, but he's the best player that could have started there.
He's just a good basketball player. And at a certain point, when you have limitations on your roster, play your best players, right? And so they got Dante, and that team last year, they lacked pace. There's a seriousness of the team that I think kind of accidentally pivoted to quote-unquote moody at times, between people have talked about the Julius Randle stuff, and I don't think it's just him. I think it's the accumulation of the entire team. But now you are going into this season in which now this team is overloaded with talented guards between Ant, Ayo, LaMelo, and when Dante comes back. But also, I think the energy shift from what the team had last year, which was a slowness, a muddiness at the time, a just quote-unquote moodiness. I'm just going to say what they said, moody. And I think that's why LaMelo coming in is also, in addition to the X's and O's, just, wow, okay. It's going to be a big contrast, I think, in terms of the style. What Tim Connelly, a quote he said, which continues to stand out to me, quote, he's never had a bad day. And we know last year, half of the days felt bad. You walk in and you know what type of team you're getting based off the body language of your roster in the first quarter. I just think there's going to be a very different, even if it's not immediately better, I think it's going to be different type of style and temperament relative to previous years.
Yeah, I'm excited for some higher tempo basketball and get rid of some of the stagnant offense type of stuff. And, you know, one of the more frustrating things with this team over the last few years has been the clutch time offense and how inconsistent it seems to be. It doesn't really seem like they really know what they're doing on the court sometimes, and who's going to create shots for who, and just like inconsistent roles. I don't know what it is. It just feels like they're reacting on the fly to everything. And now you bring in a guy who just like, there's no stagnant offense with LaMelo Ball. And somebody's going to create plays for others at a super high level. And I'm very excited. We could talk forever about how much LaMelo Ball is going to help the offense and other players.
10-hour podcast, everybody. Let's just talk LaMelo Ball.
Yeah, we'll get off at 1 a.m. tonight. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the big things for me, just a consistent approach on offense and, you know, just somebody who can run the show.
Yeah, no doubt. And we talked about this at lunch today, man. I mean, when you hear about, remember last year when they brought in Ayo, and I feel confident about this. I was super fond of that move, and I still am. And we just watched what a guard who tries to play in transition does and how it changes the offense. And you and I were just like, whoa, this is different compared to what we've seen the last 2 years. Now you add LaMelo to that. I think we're going to get that same feeling when LaMelo Ball gets a rebound and throws a full court pass at the corner of the three-point line, or he throws an alley-oop to Beringer or Gobert in transition. I think we're just going to look at each other and just say, oh my gosh, where's this been since, I don't know, ever? Ricky Rubio win? Holy crap.
Yeah. I mean, you probably remember this game. It was the game before the All-Star break against Portland, and Ayo hit a really big game. And I just remember he had like 4 or 5 assists to Rudeen in that game. And I was like, my gosh, this feels good. Like, we have a guy that actually knows how to like pass to Rudy Gobert. And it's not like he was doing anything super exceptional. It's just like, oh, this is like what a guy who can like play the point guard position more so can do. And Ayo's not even like the purest point guard ever. He's a really good combo guard. Like, think about what LaMelo's going to be able to do in ball screen actions, and what, you know, Rudy Gobert is one of the best, you know, screeners in the NBA. That's a really underrated trait. I mean, it's a huge reason why Mike Conley was able to be an effective player at points, was think about the amount of open threes that Rudy Gobert created off of screens for Mike Conley over the last 3 years. It's a pretty high percent of his looks, I bet, with Rudy on the court. So having those two be able to run ball screens and work off each other and maximize each other, and then Anthony Edwards is maybe the leading scorer in the NBA, off the ball, being the best catch and shoot player in the league next year, combined with what he can do on the ball. I don't know. I can't stop thinking about it.
I haven't fully computed what it could look like, how fast it could be, the connective tissue of this team. And Tim Connelly talked about the connective tissue, the need for more of that, and LaMelo being a part of that solution, and just having two guards, not only LaMelo, but Ayo as well, who are so good in their ability to push pace and generate easy baskets. We did not have enough of that last year. They try to play faster. 2 years ago is when it was ugly. Last year, they tried to play faster. Wasn't always as pretty, but I think it's going to be natural to this roster. It felt like last year was kind of the growing pains to this year, where they're trying to start to play fast, get those pattern recognition abilities to the players. And then the next year, when the roster is built well, then you can have that type of structure where it's natural. So that's how it seems watching from a distance. And I actually think this is a good way to transition to Dosunmu, because another really fascinating point I took away from it was when Tim Connelly talked about Dosunmu and him potentially having bigger offers in the market and taking less money to come back to Minnesota. I feel like I'm on Twitter too much, man. I hear people say that's a way overpay, and I've always never fully agreed with. I've never agreed with, I think, how certain people feel about Ayo. I think he's a really good player, but that just stood out to me. So what did you think on that?
Yeah, the discourse has been weird about like the contract. It's like 11% of the cap, guys. Like the caps went up 22% over the last 4 years. It's probably gonna go up more over the next 4 years. I don't think people are like, when we see these new contracts, we're not like, think about the percent of the cap when you see these deals is what I would say, because it's not like he's getting like what he's making right now in like so like when does deal end, like 2030 or something, when he's making like $22 million or whatever it is, then that's gonna be like the mid-level contract. Then he's gonna be like just above the mid-level contract by a percentage point or two over the next 5 years. I would say he's definitely worth that, even if he's a high leverage bench player on a really good team overall, even though he's going to be a guy that is going to be in and out of the starting lineup potentially. That's part of the question with this roster right now, figuring out that fifth starter. Is it Ayo? Is it somebody who's more of a traditional, guy that can play power forward? But I don't know. He was a 50-40-90 guy basically for us, I believe, this year on like 14-4-3, 14-4-4 or something like that. He allows us to play at a higher pace. He's a fine defender. He's a really good screen navigator. I want some of the off-ball defense specifically to get better, and that's a big deal for him this year, trying to improve on him and Anthony Edwards specifically. But he's a good basketball player, guys. I don't know what we're talking about. We're just looking at the on-off stats online, and we're like, oh, he's not a good basketball player because this one stat's not very good. I don't know, man. He like 43 points in that game against Denver in the playoffs. He pretty consistently steps up and improves his play when he gets a bigger role. Why can't he continue to improve too as a basketball player like he has over the last 2 years?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think it's kind of a perplexing situation that Ayo's been through the last few years. We've talked about this, how much of his on and off stats in Chicago were impacted by the fact that Chicago just had way too many guards of his caliber on the same roster, in which there's just no scarcity, or just very little scarcity of what he brought to the table. So when he went off the court, then it wasn't like there was a big difference being made. That would hurt your on-off stats. But we also saw in March last year when he really started running the offense in that March stretch. At that time, he led the team in plus minus because, one, he was really good, but number two, he was the one guy on the roster who was at that level who could create and bring what he brought to the table that he did. So I think Ayo's a good player, man. I think the shooting, I think the transition ability, he's kind of got the Halliburton golf swing shot, but it goes in. I never worry about it going in. And I think the second round was rough, but that was injury.
He's hurt.
I mean, he had a lower body injury, calf stuff. That's not easy to play through. And I'm sure I'm not in Io's head. I'm not speaking for him. But if I was Io, I'd be worried about getting seriously injured at that point of the playoffs if I had calf stuff going on too. So plus he's a rim attacker and Wemby's in the paint on top of it. So all of that added up, I think I just am more gracious toward him for that. And I think he did a lot of really good things last year. And I think he's got a good season ahead of him. I think he's going to really enjoy playing a fast offense in which he's probably going to have to play on and off the ball depending how the rotation works. I bet he gets like 28 minutes a game. I have high expectations for Io this year, man.
Yeah, and I mean, addition by subtraction, you're like Julius Randle, who can be a really productive and good basketball player. I think he's going to produce a lot of numbers in Brooklyn upcoming this season, but he's a bit of a ball stopper, and on high-level teams, that's not super ideal. He's not a floor spacer really at all. And Dante DiVincenzo didn't play obviously at all in that Spurs series. So when you're a rim attacker like Ayo Dosunmu, maybe not the craziest shot creator in the world, you're more of like a play finisher. I think he's going to be way more valuable on a roster that has a healthy Dante DiVincenzo, but also a LaMelo Ball, spacing on the floor and playmaking for others, and Ayo being able to feed off of that. Like we're not paying Ayo Dosunmu to go out and average 20 points per game. We're paying Ayo Dosunmu like 11% of the cap to be a really good basketball player. You know what I mean? And I think that's what he's going to do.
Yep. And 20 million is kind of the new 10 million in the NBA. And number two, and I'm worried about this, man. I'm worried despite him having a solid year next year, his on-off numbers are not going to look great still because he's going to be replacing LaMelo Ball, who's been one of the most effective on-off engines in the league. So he's low chance he's going to override LaMelo's value. So I wouldn't be shocked if he gets on the court and people are like, look, they're worse with him again. It's like, guys, stats are important. They're the final result, but there's a lot of context to stats. So that's why I've been pretty gracious toward Ayo. I'm a big fan of him and think he's got a good year ahead of him, whether he starts, whether he doesn't. And let's actually talk about that a little bit because they also talked about power forward in the interview, and a couple of things that stood out to me. Number one, let's explore this part of it first. They talked about they have some comfortability with the options at power forward, and I just want to hear what you're thinking at this point of the offseason with the state of the roster power forward right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the weak spot for me. I would like to see another body for not only depth purposes, but just talent overall. There's viable options. I think there's better options that I hope we can figure out. But, nobody's really talking about Josh Green. Like, remember the last time Minnesota had a considered throw-in in a trade in Nickeil Alexander-Walker? I don't think he's going to be as good as him, but, I don't think people are talking about how this dude is shooting 40% from three and being a plus defender over the last 4 years in the NBA. And he was a legit good role player on a Dallas Mavericks team that went to the NBA Finals and beat the Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals. He's one of the lower usage ball handlers in the NBA, which can be a good and bad thing. I mean, that kind of shows he doesn't really do a lot with the ball, but shows you he can play off of these guys and be a really effective 3-and-D guy and just play his role, play off LaMelo Ball, play off Anthony Edwards. And I kind of wonder if they go with him at the power forward spot. Maybe they go small and they're just like, we don't have an answer right now, but we're going to get our 5 best players in the core. We're going to start Ayo. I haven't seen Trey Lyles didn't play in the NBA last year, so it's weird for me to be like, okay, let's start Trey Lyles. But yeah, he was really solid in his recent NBA tenure with the Kings. I think he can be a impactful floor spacing option off the bench. But I mean, we'll see what happens there. But if it's not we're just going to start our 5 best guys, honestly, Josh Green feels like the guy to me to start at the 4.
It's funny because since the LaMelo trade, it feels like Josh Green's gotten the Alan Crabb or Jared Bayless type of reputation where just a player who's not going to impact a lot of it and just be a throw-in in the trade. Those were 2 big examples in the Cat era. But like you mentioned, I think he's got something to him. I think is in his Dallas days when he played next to Luka, he was very solid. And there was a lot of guys at his position in Charlotte, so there weren't a ton of minutes for him last year. But a couple of years ago, guys like Detroit would go after him, and everybody goes, "Oh, they got Josh Green. Wow." So we're not that far off of when people thought of him as an impactful young piece. And players who are athletic, he's athletic. Players who can hit 37 to 42% on catch and shoot threes, which he can do, and play in transition, those are not bad options. If this team is going to lack a big body, I think having somebody who can play some point of attack and somebody who can hit an open three, that's a fair fifth starter. Now, is he going to be your fifth best player? No. And not very often on great teams, the fifth best player is the fifth starter. It's more about...
It wasn't on the Spurs.
Wasn't on the Spurs, right? Dylan Harper, right? And still can't believe Keldon Johnson won Sixth Man of the Year over
Oh, my gosh.
Kind of the same point. Julian Champagny is what, the seventh best player on the Spurs? And he's starting.
He's just a great fit.
Shane Battier starts on the Heat. I know Shane Battier had a good career before then, but not always the best player. Mario Chalmers was on that team. Not always the best player starts on a contender as the fifth starter. So they don't need to have this big name on the fifth spot so we can go on Twitter and look at, oh my gosh, look at these five. Look at the Sixers with these five, right? They don't need that. It would be nice to have, but, you know, if they don't get somebody outside of the roster, and we'll talk about that soon, if they can get somebody who allows Jaden some on-off ball versatility where he can roam, he can play point of attack, but if he's roaming, you don't feel absolutely exposed if he's not playing point of attack. If they have somebody who can do that and hit open threes, those would be two really good things. And if that's Josh Green, wonderful. If Jalen Clark could hit a corner three at a 38% clip and higher next year, man, I'm feeling very tempted to start somebody like that because he's a legitimately special defender. And that would allow Jaden to roam at the four. So what do you think about Jalen Clark as a prospect in that way?
Yeah, it completely comes down to the 3-point shot. It looks like he's been working on it. Even like, I remember when he signed his contract, he was reacting to stuff online. People telling him to get a jump shot, and he agreed. Like he knows he needs to get the jump shot better. If he can give me like 36% on relatively solid volume, that's a guy that could maybe be a fifth starter, but not just that, just be a impactful player on the roster. And that's really all it comes down to. He's a nice cutter. He's a smart player with where he moves off the ball.
He is.
You know, when you have Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball and then Jaden McDaniels also in high leverage games, you don't really need Clark to do too much with the ball. You just need him to finish plays and be a reliable open shooter. So it just completely comes down to the shots. But that fifth starter being somebody who can take, like you were just saying, those matchups away from McDaniels would be so awesome because I want him to get more responsibility in offense. It's just so clear to me. There's so much meat on the bone with him as an offensive player. I know he can be a 20-point per game guy at some point in his career. He just needs the opportunity, and he needs to have some moments where he's not always guarding the Stephen Currys of the world. He's still going to be guarding Steph Curry this year. It doesn't really seem like we have an option right now to fully take that away from him unless Anthony Edwards wants to go do that.
Or Jalen Clark, by the way.
Oh, yeah, or Jalen Clark.
I think that's the best case scenario right there. In my opinion, with this roster, if Jalen Clark can make 38% of his threes on 4 attempts, which is around what Josh Green was on the Dallas Mavericks, and he can be an amazing defender and continue being what he's also been on offense, which is, one, a very underrated rim attacker on closeouts and in transition. People don't talk about how many fouls he can draw in games. That, as your fifth starter playing 22 minutes a game, would be a very good outcome for Minnesota. Allowing, like you said, Jaden, everybody, I think we've had this picture of Jaden, what he does, and I think he has so much more in his repertoire, and he's just been more covering holes for other people. If you have somebody who can kind of hold the fort for him and let him show his full array of skills, I think that's best case, whether it's at the 3, whether it's at the 4. So if Jalen Clark can play point of attack, that gives Jaden so much more room to breathe on defense, and then he can hopefully have less than 4 fouls and get more shots on offense. And at power forward, get more opportunity as a role man, which I think is a very underutilized aspect to his game as well. So if there's anybody who could do that, elite point of attack defense, have some physicality, and hit an open shot while not needing the ball, please start. So Jalen Clark, if you are hitting threes, my guy, I would be fully happy with him starting.
Yeah, and I mean, this Jalen Clark being able to shoot is just one of the more underrated storylines that would be great to happen. Not only with just for the on-court stuff, but look at that contract you got him on, 3 years, $10 million. If he can become a solid shooter, he'd be worth 3 times that on the open market. That's a $10 million player. If you can get a guy who's 37% on 3.5 attempts per game, and then a real, truly elite defender, that's a $10 million player.
No doubt. And by the way, I love his YouTube channel. I've been watching the Paris stuff. I've been watching the travel, just the finance information about the NBA. I love what he's doing as a content creator, and I would love a video that's just him saying how I became an NBA starter. That'd be a great YouTube video. I would totally watch. So, yeah, I hope for him, I hope he can take that leap, because I think it's possible, because at the end of the day, spot-up three-point shooting is teachable, and he shot well as a rookie on low volume. So it's just, I feel like if you can have somebody who can do those two things, I think you are well off. But that's going to be the question. I think a lot of people are scared about Jaden playing the 4. I think it's less about the size thing, because the Spurs don't have a true power forward, the Knicks don't, the Celtics didn't, right? It's not necessarily about having a true power forward in 2026, but it's just, what are you giving up if you're having Jaden on the perimeter or not on the perimeter? I think that's more the question about putting Jaden at the 4 for me relative to his skill set. I get the questions about guarding Zion or Giannis for him, but that's going to be, I think, the number one thing at starting. Terrence Shannon too. Can you do that too? Can you be a physical defender? Can you play off the ball and be a transition monster, which we know he can be? But also, I want to hear what you think about this. But the question with Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to be, how impactful can he be without the ball in his hands? So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, pure catch and shoot numbers, he's been pretty good. The first 2 years of his career, he's been an effective off-ball shooter. But yeah, I mean, just find a way to. I think the athleticism and the real strength component he has, I think he's a leverage even more as a defender, because he could really, really be a fun defender, consistently, if he fully goes into that. I know he's going to have the energy for it. It's good. I think it'd be cool if there's games where he has the ball in his hands a lot and he's having the ability to crash the paint, play make for others off kickouts and everything like that. As long as it's efficient and he's not rushing himself, that's something that I'll be watching a lot this upcoming season, him staying under control more, knowing the right times to attack. I think maybe playing against Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs defense wasn't the best example of that. There was a lot of times where he was rushed. But there's a lot of moments that's holy crap, look what he's doing against the best defense in the league. And it's what's he going to do against the Kings in the second quarter of a January game if he has the ball in his hands? You know what I mean? So, but for him, it's, what can he do on defense kind of, because how are you going to get on the court with all these other guards? Got to defend.
And that's been a question about him as a draft prospect going back to 24, where he was this amazing on-ball player at Illinois, but there were some questions about how his on-ball skill set would translate to the NBA and how he would scale down. I think it's a bittersweet reality. He is showcased in his second year. He can create on the ball, but how often are you going to do that? And what I think, if you're at that type of level in the rotation, you want to be as scalable as possible. That's very critical. So I think if there's a world where he can be a viable option in those ways you mentioned, that would be a big bonus to the value he has, where you don't have to just say, all right, he needs the ball, right? And I think that transitions well to the last guy who we just talked about Dosunmu, right? If you put Dosunmu starting, theoretically the ball goes into Shannon's hands, which is great. And then you have little doubt about his ability to be productive, but you also want to be able to have a guy like Ayo be able to create as well with his ability, which is why to me it makes sense to have him on the bench. But he does have the length, the athleticism, the on-off versatility offensively. I think to blend well into the starting lineup and just pull off a top 5 players in your lineup type rotation. But are you leaning towards starting your 5 best players on the team right now, or are you leaning just maximize Ayo off the bench and then find the best fit at the 4?
Man, honestly, like, this is probably like the wrong answer, but it might be matchup dependent almost, and like who you're playing. And that's just not a way you can operate when you get to high leverage games. You got to probably run out the same 5. But I guess if I had to pick one way to go, I would hope that maybe a Josh Green can be the guy right away. But I would also completely be cool with starting the 5 best guys and seeing if they can figure it out. But the most logical one to me is probably having Ayo off the bench, which will be interesting as well. This is, I mean, what a great problem to have. This was not like the last few years has been like, where's the creation coming from? Where's our
Can they start a point guard taller than Wilder? Can we do that?
And now it's like, oh, we got like 2 guards a game that might not be playing as much as they should, if at all. Like Bones Highland, is he going to have a smaller role next year? Like
the fact he's the 5th guard on a team, by the way, when Dante's healthy, Bones Highland can play, and I think we saw that
too. I wasn't even thinking of Dante yet.
Yeah, we saw that last year. Bones Highland can ball, and he was critical in that second half of last season. And his shot making, he really began putting it together. I was frankly surprised he came back on a minimum contract. But the fact you have a guy like that as your 5th guard, I think Bones Highland, especially mid-season this year, once again, is going to have moments where you realize having him on your roster still is a massive luxury.
Yeah, when Dante comes back and if the roster is healthy, it's like Anton, LaMelo are starting, and then maybe Josh Green is starting, then you got to find minutes for all of Bones, Clark, Ayo, Shannon. Isaiah Evans doesn't stand a chance, unfortunately. I'm trying to think, do we have anybody else right now? It's like you have those 4 guys. I mean, yeah, Isaiah Evans, man, it's over, dude. Oh,
he's a rookie. Let's not do that. He's a rookie.
I'm excited. I mean, it'd be great to see Evans play a few times. But just knowing our history of playing those guys, it's probably not going to happen. But I mean, it's a great problem to have with 6 legit NBA players in front of them. And then we'll see what happens. I thought Bones was going to get more than the minimum too. I think he's probably better than a minimum player, to be honest.
He is 100% in my opinion. I told my friend this: if he signed a 2-year, $16 million deal somewhere else, I wouldn't have been, whoa, that's a lot for Bones. I would have been like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if a team maybe not the Brooklyn Nets exactly, but like a team that's bad with cap space is like, we'll give you a 2 for 16 second-year team option, I would not have been shocked.
Yeah, no, and I would have said that's not a bad deal for Bones Highland. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. As long as you have a guy who can shoot and defend, I think you can have an unlimited source of that. So that's what I'm looking at the power forward, or just general 5th. I don't want to even label it power forward. It's more 5th starter more than anything. So your 5th starter, can you do those 2 things and provide optionality in your starting lineup? That's great. And also Tim Connelly talked about there's 1 or 2 guys that they're talking about who could be interesting. And my guess, I'm just based off Michael Scotto's reporting in the past, I think Jonathan Kuminga's in there.
He should be. I mean, who at this point is giving Jonathan Kuminga a big contract?
I don't know.
Like, who is paying this dude what he wants? Why? It should be such a good option for him. You're guaranteed a big role on a team where you can contend, play for a really high-level winning team, around a team full of a ton of playmakers, and it just comes down to him and what he wants to be. Like, if I'm him, I'm like, I want to go try to be Aaron Gordon, not Giannis. You know how much money he could make if he goes and tries to be Aaron Gordon? And
100%, 100%.
And like a good year with Minnesota, he comes in and let's say he's the starting guy, plays like 27 minutes per game and is a good two-way player, giving us an efficient 15. And it's like showtime in Minnesota and we make a deep playoff run. You're telling me a team's not going to offer him more than a mid-level next summer? 100% they will. Like, he can totally be a good starter on this team. So I don't yeah, he's probably going to be taking a pay cut to come here, but it's for long-term gain. I don't know where necessarily he's going to have a better role. I don't think Cleveland's a better role. That would be probably the team that comes to mind. I mean, they freed up money with the Dennis Schroeder deal. By the way, Dennis Schroeder, when's he going to be on the Wolves, since he's going to be apparently playing for every team in the NBA at some point?
Yeah, what team hasn't he been on, I think, is the better question.
And I think it's like half the league at this point. But yeah, Kuminga, I was looking at the list of names. Kelly Olynyk would maybe be another nice name. I think Kevin Love has a little bit of juice left, and obviously it would be cool like for him to end his career here. But it feels like he might stay in Utah. I don't know what's going to happen there. But the free agent market's pretty dry right now besides Kuminga at the top. And I really think Kuminga should come to Minnesota. I think it makes so much sense.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I said that in previous shows, be Aaron Gordon, not Giannis. And also with the Kuminga thing, which I find a little bit ironic, it's that I feel like that's the role Golden State wanted him to play young, and now it feels like the only option for him right now to really make it in the NBA. So now I'm just wondering how he handles that this season with – I thought he was disappointed at the 2-year 48 he got last year. And now we're talking minimum, which is bizarre. But another name I thought about, by the way, Ben Simmons. Would you not make a call and just see if he's interested in coming back for a minimum contract, see what he has? I've thought about this quite a bit. And as long as he's not too demanding, man, why wouldn't you just make a call for somebody of that talent caliber?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what he's got left in the tank. He was an unbelievable player even like 4 or 5 years ago or whatever it was. But kind of weird fit to me, even if he like has the juice, because he kind of needs the ball. And I think that works with guys like LaMelo and Ant, but like off the bench, like is he can be a good enough talent to justify having the ball over Shannon and Ayo? I don't know, because I just don't know if he can really play off the ball too much. But as like a pure talent get, if he still has it, like that's a plus defender who could really be a playmaker at points, and maybe he's like a really good just talent add, and you just figure it out later. But I don't know. I guess we haven't seen him play in the NBA in a little bit either.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this in the lens of a minimum contract is such little risk. They have to sign somebody at some point this summer. They're one roster spot short, I believe. So they have to sign somebody. Might as well sign the 6'10" former number 1 pick who 5 years ago, Rudy Gobert won Defensive Player of the Year. Second place was Ben Simmons. And you add an athlete of that caliber, and I don't know, I'm speculating. I'm speaking very glass half full in favor of Ben Simmons in this little elevator pitch. But maybe a year off mentally, physically was good for him. The back injury, I think, is very underplayed, how significantly terrible that was for him, how much that affected his play. So Ben Simmons, I keep going back to him, and I'm saying, I might as well try it out. If you're getting a revitalized Ben Simmons, the optionality with your team, I'm not even buying that he needs the ball as much as long as he's active as a screener and transition player. And just having a guy with connective feel, the more the better of that. I just don't think there's anybody else with that type of upside in a one-year context.
Yeah, from like an upside perspective, it's hard to maybe find a minimum player, like a true minimum player that could maybe present more upside to you than that. So from that perspective, and Minnesota probably needs to hit another upside thing, whether that's a player on the roster having an unexpected breakout or them finding something else in a trade or this signing, like this last roster spot, like we probably need one more thing at least to go our way. And maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah, it just speculating. I'm purely speculating. I would categorize him as a very interesting free agent option. Yeah. And he's got talent, and who knows, he's in his late 20s still. And if he comes back healthier, back injuries are no joke, y'all. They're no joke. I know people joke about the layup, and I've always stood by this, by the way. This isn't a new take of mine, but how much of that was I'm just not feeling right, and I don't feel great about like quick movements in my body at the rim right now. I think there's a lot of psychological stuff back injuries do. So I'm not forgiving of Ben with how he's handled some things in the past, and there's been questions about his work ethic and somewhat arrogance and things like that. But I mean, it's your 14th roster spot, and he has no leverage if he's on a minimum. So I would consider it, even though he wouldn't be the best fit with Beringer or Gobert, but it's a minimum player. So all of that, I think, is worth mentioning. And speaking of Jon Beringer, in the second half of the Jon K event, they brought back Matt Lloyd alongside Tim Connelly to talk. It was a lot of their scouting stories, which is super fun. But they also very specifically talked about Jon Beringer for an extended period of time and just how high they are on him, and also just their story of discovering him. And one of the big takeaways was, holy crap, not only are they high on Jon Beringer, but like exceptionally high. Like they weren't talking about Rob Dillingham like this after his rookie year. For example, they had a quote. Tim Connelly particularly gave a quote about Jon Beringer, man, that got me especially excited. So he said, in regard to Jon Beringer, he has these unique physical tools that you see once in every 10 to 15 years. And to connect some dots, Giannis Antetokounmpo was drafted in 2013. That was 10 to 15 years, and that's a pretty similar archetype of athlete.
Now we're talking.
Is it time to go crazy? What did you think about what they talked about relating to Jon Beringer?
I loved it because it makes me feel better about my stance, because I know I'm really crazy high on him. People who follow my page know I talk about this dude very highly. I am the self-proclaimed leader of the Jon Beringer fan club. I mean, look at, I don't know if there's a picture, but like still images of like the difference in his body from Summer League 2 years ago and then this past year. And it's like the work this dude puts in, the physical and athletic traits he has, the trajectories on, the talent he's already displayed in both the NBA, the G League level. And the fact that he's 19 years old, I find it really, really hard to believe that this dude's not going to be an awesome NBA player. I think there's a clear plan for him to take over for Rudy Gobert as soon as next season, if not the year after that, just with how contracts are lined up and talent-wise as well. But I couldn't be more ecstatic that he's going to have a bigger role, like a big role on this team as the clear backup center, probably playing close to 20 minutes per game. And I mean, individually talk with Tim Connelly as well. He believes all the same stuff that I believe. They're very high on this dude. They're very excited for the role he's going to have, and it makes me feel really good about that, because I think he's going to be one of the future core pieces of this team, to be completely honest with you.
And we've seen reports that they view Beringer and that Ant, Jaden, Nas at the time, but now LaMelo, Beringer type core, right? They've
untouchable in the Giannis deals.
They've thrown him in some pretty big conversations, and they also said that he's going to be a superhuman defender in the NBA, talking about his versatility guarding Anthony Edwards in practice. And they just speak of him in a way that doesn't just sound like, we like our mid first round pick, we think he's going to be a rotation player. Just my intuition, when you throw some pretty extreme statements like a once in every 10 to 15 year type athlete, sounds like they view him as a big time player. And they recited that story when they saw him at the Chicago kind of watered down basketball gym, and he was doing free throw line dunks after the practice. And they were just like, this dude's awesome. And how badly they wanted to trade up for him, and they couldn't put anything together. And then they just got lucky that he fell to them. Just I am just so curious about what type of leap Jon Beringer could take. They talked about he has a handle, some offensive skills that they can untap with him as well. It's just, I don't want to throw extreme names, and we need to see him play, and we need to see where he develops and where he is at age 20 next season. But it's just, he's becoming one of the most interesting stories on the team next year. How key, or how much he can grow, and how key that is for the Timberwolves' development, their finances toward him. Because the sooner he can become a starting caliber player with LaMelo and Ant and all these guys you have to pay, the better. So I'm hoping that everything that people are saying about Jon Beringer is true, and I think he has the upside too.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't get a ton of opportunity last year, but the 8 games that he played 15-plus minutes and he averaged 11.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks per game on good efficiency. And these were against mostly really like good high leverage teams. He played a lot against, I think he played like 25 minutes against Giannis and the Bucks. He closed the game against the Spurs. I think that was the Ant career high game that we unfortunately lost.
And he was making some good reads in that game.
Yeah.
Some of his short roll playmaking instincts and the lob just threat that was really impressive.
And then he has a really good game against the Rockets. And I mean, the season finale kind of just put it all on display against the Pelicans, who obviously not a great team, but they're still playing some of their, an all-rookie player, and Derek Queen, he goes out, I think, what was it, 24 points, 12 rebounds, and 7 blocks or something. I know he had 7 blocks for sure.
Yeah. And
then a 20-point double-double. I don't know, dude. The talent is pretty insane. I think one of my favorite parts was, I don't remember if it was Matt or Tim, but they finally got to sit down with him after that workout and get to talk to a dude who couldn't really speak much English, and how much they could already see he cared and wanted to become great and wanted to be this really good basketball player and had this intention to detail.
They called him obsessive.
Yeah.
They used the word obsessive.
I don't know. I kind of find it hard for people who are obsessive to fail, not just in basketball, but with a lot of things in the world. So I don't know. I really think this is going to be one of the better bigs in the NBA. And he was just a random first round pick we got in the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, which people can criticize that trade. But what if this dude just becomes something else? And I remember talking about this at lunch today too. And like 2 years ago, it was always like, how are we going to get a second star? Well, we might have that now in the LaMelo Ball, but what if you just hit on your draft pick at 17? What if Beringer just becomes this unbelievable basketball player that I think he can be? That's all it really takes. You don't need to go get a star now. You drafted him.
Yeah, they got LaMelo too. They got Jaden. They got Beringer. If Beringer becomes what many think he can be, I think, number one, you highlighted it, the view of the Karl-Anthony Towns trade is a little bit different. I don't think the narrative is ever going to win the fact that he won a championship in a New York market. You probably can't overcome that. But if Beringer becomes this excellent player, which he has the tools to be, and all the indicators are pointing up, then that makes the trade look a lot better for Minnesota, considering the timeline that they're clearly leaning into with Anthony Edwards. So I am really excited about what I heard. I knew they were very high on Beringer. I've heard some pretty big statements about him around, but I think the fact that they spoke about him as glowingly as they did, highlighting his tools, highlighting his flashes, highlighting his character, I think they want him to play a lot, and I think they want him to take a big step. And if they do, not only does it make the cap trade look better, but in terms of roster construction, there are some simplifications that come from that because there aren't a lot of draft picks to work with right now. So, yeah, man, the Beringer stuff is really exciting. And the last part of the show that I would like to talk about, Tim Connelly was asked about his contract situation. And for those who don't know, this is the last year of his contract. He's technically a free agent next summer. And there isn't an extension that has happened yet. and he was asked about it, and I don't have the full quote in front of me, so it's going to be more of paraphrasing, but he was asked about it, and he just said he's loved Minnesota, he's loved the time here, and my first thought was, okay, he's speaking in past tense, this is bad, but then he goes and says, we view this as home, and we hope we're here for a long time. So he didn't really answer where things are in the extensions, nor would you expect that from a Pobo. They're very private people. But what was your takeaway when you heard about his answer relating to the extension status?
I feel like he kind of dodged it a little bit, but I really like the part where he talked about his kids referring to his home, because like he personally refers to home as like Baltimore, where he grew up, but then he was like, but my kids refer to home as Minnesota, like going back there whenever they're away for whatever reason. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I honestly just kind of think it comes down to what the ownership group was willing to pay to keep him, and I think they should pay that price. I think not only is he an awesome basketball mind and a great, just dude overall within the organization, I think got to keep great people around, but I definitely believe in letting guys finish their process. And bringing in a new Pobo would be kind of weird, even if it's a great basketball mind, because that guy's going to have different opinions on players, they'll have a different vision, maybe different things they want to do with the roster, with shaking it up, and maybe that's stuff that we don't want, and we want to stay on this clear, this path that we're on right now. So I would love to see an extension happen. It's probably not going to happen right now. It's probably going to happen next year. So maybe it depends a little bit on how the season goes and then how much the ownership group is willing to pay for him. But I think you got to pay him. And I think if they do that, he'll stay.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic for sure. It's hard to ever really know. But two things that really stand out to me. Number one, he multiple times highlighted his relationship with the ownership and how they're always texting about, what about this guy in the roster? What about this guy? He gave them a lot of credit for the flexibility they provide him. And as a president, you like that. You like it when you have an ownership that trusts you and isn't overly controlling and pays you well, and they do all of those things. So on those surfaces, you don't know what's going on day to day or personal, family, things like that. But all the things that we can see as fans, all of those look pretty positive. And also, the Tim Connelly, Matt Lloyd regime, they've put so much into this core. They literally can't trade a first-round pick for another couple of years until a 2035 draft pick is unfrozen. And just with that in consideration, if they brought in a new president and he comes in, yeah, you got Ant, you got LaMelo, those aren't your guys, and you don't have any draft picks to trade. Number one, that's hard, in my opinion, to make a pitch about, as great as Anthony Edwards is on your roster. But also, if you're the ownership and you see that much investment, and as long as things are good, you would want to keep that around, because how much has been invested into Tim Connelly's vision and Matt Lloyd's vision overall. So like I said, who knows what happens? I believe when he opted into his extension last time, it happened late August last year. I think it was last year. I'm not 100% positive.
A weird contract.
I think it was last year. Might have been the year before, but it was one of those 2 years. He opted into his last 2 years, I believe, and that was around late August. I think it was August 27th. That's the time in my head that's popping up right now. Whether that was 25 or 24, who knows? But
Wolves brain.
Right? Oh my gosh, yeah. But
I got a Wolves brain too.
But it's going to be something to navigate in the near future. And I think with how much invested into his vision, hopefully he stays around and can capitalize on it.
Yeah, I'm sure he's thought about it himself. Like, the grass isn't always greener. And how many ownership groups are willing to pay the luxury tax at this level, like the Wolves ownership group is right now? Like, the Wolves previous regime wasn't. And then how many teams have this level of talent, and just so we're starting to build some real continuity. It would be a good time to keep that continuity. It's where would he go though? I don't know. It's maybe
we've heard in the past, Dallas was after him. Masai Ujiri ultimately took the job in Dallas, so that's closed. Tim Connelly also said in his interview with Jon K, if you guys haven't seen it, by the way, it's on the Jon Krawczynski show. They have the live recording. But he mentioned in this question that there are multiple suitors who have been around. Who knows the status of those suitors? That wasn't elaborated or anything like that, nor would it be. But it was mentioned that multiple teams have interest, and I firmly believe that.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. None of those teams have Anthony Edwards, and Minnesota's kind of been go crazy, spend on the luxury tax, go after whatever star you want, go free. And I think if you're a president, that's a pretty nice state to be in.
100%. And yeah, it's just the combination of everything.
Yeah, no doubt. It's going to be fascinating, but those are our takeaways following the Tim Connelly, Matt Lloyd interview with Jon Krawczynski. It was, like I said, really fun to just hear those guys talk, and just at this point of the off season, man, and being able to see you be able to run into fans, being able to run back into people within the organization. It was a good time, man. It was good run into you there.
Yeah, 100%. I'm definitely gonna be going to more of those events. I recently, there's people under 21 there, but I recently turned 21 like a few months ago, so
it's just a baby.
For me to go. It's easier for me to go to those events now. But yeah, I think one of the workers there was saying that there's going to be multiple more Jon K shows there this upcoming year. So I'm excited to just go to those events, see the Wolves community come together. So many awesome people there. A lot of people really excited about the team. And yeah, that was just a super fun event.
No doubt, man. No doubt. It was good to just see Wolves people again. Hopefully the next little bit flies by and we're right back at it, man. But good to see you, man. I'm happy for you. Good luck senior year. All the hockey, the sports shows, the reporting, the Timberwolves content creation, the sports media, Swiss Army knife. You're grinding, man. Good for you.
I appreciate it, man. It's always good talking with you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Make sure to subscribe to Wilder Wolves podcast, everybody. More content is going to be coming in the near future. Analysis, fan interactions, great interviews, always trying to land some big guests. So we'll see there. But it's always great to hear from you guys, or hear from you, Zach, and see you guys who are listening to the show. You guys are wonderful, and thank you all so much. This is Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame Mode Fandom.